What? All these hens? And I only have 2 eggs? What's up with that? Hey guys, Stoney Creek here. You've caught me out in the chicken yard. It doesn't look like there's a lot of chickens behind me, but they're scared of the camera and they're scared of me sitting right in the middle of them. Maybe they'll come out here in a little bit. But I wanted to talk about chickens. This time of year is when I see a lot of the same questions being posed either on YouTube or on Facebook, and it's, why is my chicken not laying eggs? Or what am I doing wrong? My chickens have stopped laying eggs. Now most times these questions are coming from new people. It seems like chickens, of course, are the gateway animal to most homesteaders. But we're also seeing a big influx in the urban population. A lot of municipalities are allowing up to sometimes 6 hens in the city limits. So people are getting a flock of 6 hens or so. They're wanting their homegrown eggs. They've had eggs all summer, and now all of a sudden they've stopped laying eggs, and they're wondering what they've done wrong. Well, I'll tell you, chances are you've not done anything wrong. But I thought I'd take a few minutes and just kind of address some of those issues. And I've got my helpful partner here that's going to help me explore those issues in detail. Now there's probably a plethora of reasons why your hens aren't laying eggs right now, and I'm going to address the top 5 reasons why your hens have probably stopped laying. So the 5 things that I'm going to address today would be stress, parasites, age, nutrition, and finally what we call the natural pause. So what am I talking about with stress? Anytime your hen's upset, that's going to cause her to stop laying eggs. Now what's some of the big contributing factors to what can stress a hen? A move. Say you bought adult hens, they were laying at someone else's farm, you brought them to your place, and you've not seen an egg since. It's pretty stressful moving from one place to another, getting used to the new surroundings. If you've incorporated them into an existing flock, they're trying to figure out their pecking order. That can be a big stressor. And that, of course, is going to decrease your egg production. Now, some of the other stressors, you might have some nighttime visitors that you're not even aware of, that although you're not losing any birds in your flock, a raccoon that's trying to get inside your coop, or a coyote trying to dig in, some kind of a smell is alerting them, or some kind of a sound. All those things are stressors. Any type of a stressor like that, it could, during the day, it could even be your own family dog that's harassing them, either through the wire or if you free range them. It could be your neighbor's dogs coming over and harassing them that you're not aware of. It could even be snakes in the coop. That's going to create a stressor. Anytime these hens don't feel safe, they're going to slow down or stop their egg production. So those are all things that would attribute to the stress. So on parasites, if your chicken's not feeling well, if it's got parasites, whether it be internal parasites such as worms or external parasites such as mites, lice, or fleas, that's also going to impact egg laying ability. Anytime those parasites are taking nutrients from the bird itself, she's not going to be able to provide enough nutrients to actually produce an egg. And of course, if she's not feeling well, you know what? That's a stress. Really? So now we get down to the age. And why is that important? Because a lot of times people have bought those fuzzy cute little chicks at Tractor Supply or Atwoods or some farm and garden store. They raise them up, they're fully feathered, they're eating forever, and they're, oh my gosh, why am I not getting an egg? Just for that, in case you didn't know, it's going to take a hen 18 to 22 weeks before she starts laying eggs. So just for perspective, here we are, this is the 2nd of October. Your chicken would have had to have hatched sometime during the month of May, sometime between the 1st and the end of the month, to be in that 22-week window. That's 5 months. You know, if it hatched the 1st of June, you're in that 18-week window. So if your chicken didn't hatch until June or July, 1st of August, even though they might not be fully feathered, they're not old enough to lay eggs. You might get one occasionally. There's always the exception to the rule, so I know that there'll probably be someone, well, my chickens always lay eggs when. Different breeds do start at different times. So I'm only talking about the average, the mean time frame that chickens will lay eggs. but you can pretty much expect that 18 to 22 weeks. Now I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute when we talk about our natural pause, but I've got one more thing to talk about before we get into the natural pause. I mentioned nutrition. These hens are rock stars. Do you know that? Do you know that? You're a rock star. Everyone, can you see her? She's a rock star. Now why do I say rock stars? Because these chickens will do more than what most animals do. They'll lay an egg daily. On average, most large fowl chickens, they're going to lay between 280, 300 eggs a year. Now, is that consecutive? Nope, but it's going to be pretty close. Now, what are we going to do with that extra 45 days? Remember, 320, or, you know, from 300 days, and we've got 365 days in the year, so that's almost 2 months. Well, I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. But for almost every day, for 300 days, we'll use easy numbers, she's producing an egg. Now, the APA, the American Poultry Association, would say that a large fowl hen, now of course different breeds are going to be different, but on average a large fowl hen, she's going to weigh about 8 pounds. On average, an egg laid is going to be 0.13 pounds. 8-pound hen lays a 0.13 pound egg daily. So what this little hen is doing is producing about 1.4% of her body weight daily for your breakfast. Now you're thinking, well, that's only 1.4%. Let me kind of break this down for you. If a person was 120 pounds, that means they are producing almost 2 pounds of something daily coming from your body. You're still going to be doing all your daily activities. You're going to mow the lawn, you're going to play ball, you're going to do whatever you do, and at the same time you've got to get enough nutrition in to give you almost 2 pounds of flesh if you weighed 120 pounds. But I just want to put things in perspective for you. So now, why is nutrition so important? Because it takes a lot of energy for one of these hens to create one of these daily. So on average, you know, what's the nutritional needs? There's a nutritionist out there, there's scientists out there who's developed the nutrition that these guys need. But they need, on average, 16% protein daily in their diets. If you've got a heritage breed, you know, that could actually be bumped up to 18 to 20% daily. And that's just to have these guys thrive. Will they survive on a less protein? Absolutely. Kids will survive on Snickers bar too, but it's not that healthy for them. So 16 to 20%. So they're not only creating energy for themselves to do their daily pecking, their scratching, their running around, chasing grasshoppers, which is a good form of protein, but then they've also got to sit back and produce these eggs. So now one of the reasons that I'm talking about this, actually a couple of reasons, I hear, well, my chicken's free range, so they're getting all the protein they need, and I'm going to feed them scratch grain to get them come in at night. You know, normally that would be a great idea. Scratch grain is only about 8% protein, so if you want to be sure that they come home, most chickens are smart enough to know where their house is, but if you want to do that, you certainly can do that. Free ranging is great. We actually free range ourselves when we're not in the middle of hawk migration. It's in the fall time now, it's just started again, so our chickens are locked up. During the summer, we do let them run around. But anyway, when there's tons of bugs, tons of grass, tons of creepy crawlers for them to eat, they're going to get all that nutrition that they need. They're smart, they're going to look for what they need, their body tells them. It's kind of a neat thing. But this time of year, things are getting kind of scarce. What I would suggest to you, and you're going to think this will sound silly, grab a hula hoop, one of those round hoops, take it, toss it out in your yard. Inside that hula hoop, that would actually be about the same amount of area that a chicken will scratch when she's foraging in an area. See how many bugs are in there. How many grasshoppers do you see in that? How many worms? How many ants? How many things? How tall is the grass that she's going to get? Now I know that chances are you're not going to do that with a hula hoop. Believe it or not, that's, as biologists, that's what we're going to do to find out what type of ecological communities are out in that small plot of land, and then we can do math and figure out what's in the larger plot. But anyway, all that to say this, I would guess this time of year you can free range all you want, but their range is going to have to go further and further out from where they normally are, because in the summer months they've stayed close to the coop because that's where all the good bugs are, and they've had to increase that radius going out from their coop, so they've got to travel further and further to get the same, and work a lot harder to get those same amount of nutrients. So that's why I would suggest, you know, certainly this time of year you're going to want to start supplementing with a good pellet or some type of a manufactured chicken feed. Now, one of the things I want to talk about real quick, and then we're going to actually go into what I wanted to do this video on: why isn't my chickens laying eggs? We're getting there, hold on. We've got to build the story before the rest of it makes sense. So anyway, one of the things that I've been seeing a lot, and it just makes me cringe, people say add cat food. Add cat food if you want to increase your protein levels. Okay, let me talk about cat food. Remember I talked to you a couple of blogs back, people saying, oh, well, you need to add cat food. Not because they're trying to be malicious, because they've heard that from who? The old timers. Anytime I've questioned who the old timers were, they've never been able to give me that answer. But I've got a hypothesis on who those old timers are. Those are going to be probably the older men and women. It might even be grandmas, could even be great grandmas. And who knows, it might even be those people growing up as children, and that's what they've learned. Think back 20 years ago. Did we have the nutritionist and the scientists that we do today that has done the research to make the blends that are adequate for chickens? Not 20 years ago. What about 30 years ago? What about 40 years ago? You know, back then, cat food might have been the only way that they could have increased the protein in the scratch grain, which was probably all that people were able to get back then. But now let's fast forward to 2018. We're in the 21st century. We've got scientists who are making money to deciding what is best for the nutritional value of these chickens. Now, real quick biology lesson. Actually, hopefully you feel like this whole show's like that. I'm going to talk about cat food. Big thing you always hear, you'll even hear me say it because it's the easiest answer. Well, it's super high in sodium. It's not made for chickens, it's made for cats. Well, why does my cat need sodium? You know, I don't know. I'm not a cat food manufacturer. But what I do know, that cat foods has got the protein that's designed for cats, not designed for chickens. Cats have a whole different digestive system. They've got a whole different type of bacteria in their gut bacteria. Their whole digestive process is different than what a cat is. A cat's got teeth. They're going to chew. They're going to break that down. They've also got saliva, just like we do. So that's going to start that breakdown process. Then it goes into their stomach. They've got higher pH than what chickens do. They've got a large true stomach. They've got acids in there. They've got enzymes. They've got the bacteria that's designed to break down that type of cat food. And then there's even more digestive processes. It goes through both the little and the large intestine before it's finally excreted out. So it's going to have the most efficient amount of product taken from that cat food used for a cat. Now let's take our poor little chicken here. She doesn't have teeth. Did you know that? Chickens don't have teeth. They have very minimal salivary glands. So they're going to eat this. It goes from the mouth and it goes down into the crop. Inside the crop is where that food's going to collect. There's actually yeast inside the crop. Cats don't have yeast, by the way. So you're going to have yeast inside the crop that's going to start breaking that down even further. Crop's going to be about the size of this egg. If you're feeding more than 2 times the amount of this egg daily, you're feeding your chickens too much, by the way. But so it's going to sit in that crop. Now, as the yeast starts breaking that food down in the crop, it goes from there into what's called the true stomach, and that's just a little bitty sliver compared to the cat's huge true stomach. Chickens have only got a small true stomach, which, although it has some attributes of what we would consider a true stomach, it's really lacking some of the components. So from that, it almost immediately passes into the gizzard. Now that's where the chicken has teeth. It's going to chew that up with whatever grit, small rocks, etc. in that gizzard, and that's where it's going to start doing most of its digestive process. Through that gizzard, that's also where most of the nutrients are going to get absorbed, pulled out into the other body functions, and then of course it goes into both intestines and then excreted from the back of your chicken. So you can see that the digestive systems are completely different. Where I think people get confused, they see protein. Protein is X amount on cat food, protein is X amount on bird food, and they just equate protein to being protein. Well, high percent protein here, high percent protein there, so I'm going to feed this high percent protein. Proteins aren't the same. You have complete proteins, incomplete proteins. Chemically, they're made up different. There's all sorts of differences, so although that word says protein, those proteins aren't anywhere the same. So, long-winded story, all that to say this: don't feed your chickens cat food. If you want to raise the protein, because like I can tell you, even in my own area, the highest chicken protein I can get is 20%. I also raise turkeys, I also raise peafowl. 20% is not enough for a bird like that. So what would be an alternative if you feel the need that you need to break that up? Go to your farm store, buy a big bag of floating fish food. They come in pellets about the size of your little finger, little bitty round balls. They have the same type of protein that your chicken's going to need. Most times that's actually going to be at a 32-34% protein, so you can figure out the ratio that you need to add to your feed to up your feed. Now the part you've all been waiting for. I'm not sure if this is what you've been waiting for, but this is actually where I wanted to get to the meat of my conversation today. Why isn't my chicken laying eggs? Remember, this chicken's a rock star. She makes an egg almost every day for 300 days. This time of year, our daylight is waning. A chicken, she's got two eyes. Did you know that chickens have eyes? Well, those eyes have photoreceptors in there that tells something in the brain to turn on her egg factory. To be an efficient egg layer, she's going to need 12 to 14 hours minimum light. 16 hours is better. Did you know 24 hours will actually inhibit egg laying? So 12 to 14 hours on average. They need that in daylight daily to tell them to make their egg factory work. So why aren't they laying eggs this time of year? Well, the quick answer: days are shorter. Yeah, I don't even think we've got 12 hours a day right now, and it's only getting shorter still. But also, what else is going on with this chicken? Other than her body using all those resources to create that egg, this one's almost fully recovered, but they go through a molt. That's where they lose all their feathers, and they regrow those. So during the summer, when the roosters have not been gentle with the chickens on their back, and you've seen the chickens where they've lost all their feathers, she's regrowing all those feathers. In fact, she'll lose every feather on her body and it'll be regrown. Now, do they all fall off at the same time? No, but don't be surprised if you wake up and it doesn't look like a pillow fight's happened in your chicken yard either. They do lose them, quite a bit of them daily. So those feathers, they don't just pop up from nothing, something from nothing. No, actually, they've got to be developed. So how are they going to develop that? They're going to take that nutrition, 16% protein, and they're going to use that to make these feathers. From that same nutrition, they're going to use that to do any type of internal repairs that they need to. You know, it's taken a lot to create that egg every day. So they're going to just be doing body maintenance. We get a cut, we have to heal. They're going to also be healing. Their internal parts need to be healed right now. Also, their body knows that they're going into winter, so they're going to be developing fat stores. So all those resources are being used for the health of the chicken instead of the egg factory. So it's actually a natural thing, and in fact we call that the natural pause. It's a natural for a chicken to cease egg laying, shut her egg factory down, and use all those resources to rebuild the chicken, basically. Now I did want to talk just a little bit longer, because I think a lot of times we take these eggs for granted. Well, she's only popping out an egg daily. Have you seen those t-shirts? My pet gives me breakfast daily. But it takes a lot of energy to create one of these eggs. It's not just a shell with a yolk in it. If you keep in mind she's making one of these daily, and just to talk a little bit about what's going on inside her egg factory, even as a chick, she is hatched with every yolk that she'll ever have in her lifetime. That's right, every yolk she will ever have in her lifetime comes out when she's a chick. So you know what that means? At some point she's going to run out of eggs. That's just biological fact. So what's it take to create an egg? An egg's going to happen about every 24 hours. It starts out a little bitty yolk, going to come off her ovary, going to go into the egg factory. Those photoreceptors went into the egg factory to turn on the lights. They've turned on the factory. The factory's now in operation. It's like a conveyor belt. It's really cool. Yolks dropped in the factory, and it's built up to size. They're not all this big inside of her. They're little bitty things. Kind of looks like a little bitty caviar, if you would. So it drops on the conveyor belt. Then from her resources, that yolk's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until it's the size that's in the egg. Now at this time is when it also, if you have a rooster, his gametes are going to be entered onto that yolk. That's where you get the bullseye. If you don't have a rooster, you don't have to worry about that. But then as this egg is going down the conveyor belt, you have the yolk. The next thing it's going to have is called the caliciferous layer. It's a shielding over that yolk to keep the yolk from breaking. From there you get two little spring things on either side called chalice that really like shock absorbers. So from that caliciferous layer, so after you get that, it goes down, that's where the albumin is added. That's your egg white. And then you get what's called an inner membrane. That holds everything together. Then an outer membrane as it goes further down the assembly line. From there, that's where all the calcium deposits, vitamins, and everything's going to be put onto the shell as it finally continues and it exits your chicken, and then you get a shell. So you can only imagine creating that egg daily. It's going to take a lot out of that hen, and that's why her factory needs to be revitalized at this point. That's why all of her intake right now is going for feather production. It's going for egg factory vitalization. It's going for fat stores to help provide the hen for winter. And that's why the photoreceptors have closed everything down now. That's why a hen needs all that daylight, and since she doesn't have it, that's why you're not getting any eggs. Now I do know at times I have a tendency to ramble. One of my friends always accuses me, if he asks me what time it is, I'm going to tell him how to build a clock. And you know, there's probably a lot of truth to that, especially something that I get excited about. You know what? Biology excites me. So hopefully you can rest assured that it's nothing that you're doing wrong. It's just right now is the time for chickens to stop laying. Of course, look into those other things that I talked about. You know, look into the stress, look into the parasites. Make sure you've got nutrition. You might look on the calendar for age. Real quick on age, even if she was hatched the end of May, and we're right at that 22 weeks, age-wise says that she should start producing eggs. Biology-wise and sunlight is going to say that she's not. Now I will tell you just one last thing. I probably said one last thing, how many one last things ago? Artificial light. If you're buying eggs in the grocery store, I promise you they're putting eggs on artificial light. It's cost effective for them. Now on our farms, on our homesteads, are we going to use artificial light? You know, that's just a personal choice. So how much light do they need? Well, just enough light to make the eggs factories work. Here's the two cautions that I'd give you with artificial light. Keep in mind, when that hen is born, she is born with every egg that she will ever lay in her life right there from a day-old chick. No more. So using artificial light, you can promote egg laying activities. That is a fact. You will wear out your hens sooner. If you do use light, did you know that a string of white Christmas lights is enough? You don't need to have a high lumen light. I certainly would not recommend a heat lamp. That's fire hazard. That's a whole different video. Just put up a string of Christmas lights. That's going to be enough for the photoreceptors to tell that egg factory to go back online and start producing eggs. Now what I would suggest, remember I talked about stress, one of the first things. We want to do that in a stress-free manner. What I would suggest, put your lights on a timer. Actually have them go off about 4:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Shut off at 8:30 in the morning. That way your hens can go to roost with the normal setting of the sun. Nothing is more stressful to a hen than being down on the ground, they're pecking, they're in their coop, life's good, and all of a sudden it's dark. They can't see where the roost is. They don't know where their buddies are. They don't feel safe. They're just going to squat and be scared all night long. You don't want that. That will affect your egg production. Well guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this today. Hopefully you've learned a little bit something more about chickens than what you knew before. I've certainly enjoyed sitting here and chatting with you all today. I'm not sure what my helpers thought about this, but I think she's enjoyed the attention. As always, appreciate you guys. We'll see you next video.